Hello everyone, my name is Salvatore DiCostanzo. I'm an elder law attorney here in Yorktown Heights, New York, and also in Rye, New York. I hope everybody's doing well, enjoying the rest of the summer, even though it's pretty hot right now where we are here in Westchester County. Today we're going to start a chat that's going to be, in essence, like a two-part chat. And you'll see why we're going to conclude with a second chat in 2 weeks on this topic. But there have been some changes in the Medicaid laws this year. And I've been lecturing about that and writing about that, and so have my colleagues. So I don't really think it's a surprise to hear that the Medicaid home care rules have changed. There's a new look-back period that's going to be implemented starting later this year. And so we thought that because of the sensitivity in time frames that we're working with, that it would be a good idea to have a video chat like this and educate you as to just exactly what it means to have a look-back period. A lot of people are not even sure as to what it means to have a look-back period and how it applies. And then talk about the new law. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about a planning technique that you can implement in the face of this changing law. So I hope this is useful to everybody. We'll be getting actually a lot of feedback. We've emailed, thousands of people to tell them about this lecture, and there's been a lot of feedback from people saying that they're interested and this is a hot topic. And we've been getting a lot of phone calls asking questions, because people might need care in a relatively short period of time, so they want to know what they can do to get past this new look-back period. So let's start off by just giving a little bit of an education on the Medicaid look-back period, when it applies, and what a penalty period is. So generally speaking, let's talk about a nursing home Medicaid application right now. And maybe I should just step back take a few steps back. We all may get sick someday. And if we get sick, we may need a nursing home. And that's how you get into talking about nursing home care. And if we have to go to a nursing home, there's very limited ways to pay for the cost of your nursing home care. You can pay for it yourself out of your own pocket, which is quite expensive. You're talking about $15,000 a month to pay for a nursing home in the area. You can have long-term care insurance. Perhaps you have long-term care insurance. Not many people seem to have long-term care insurance these days. It should be looked at. You should review it, see if it applies. You may not be able to afford it. You may have health conditions. There could be various reasons why you may not actually have long-term care insurance, but it should not be overlooked. Medicare pays for the nursing home, right? If you're 65 and older, or if you're under 65 and disabled, you might have Medicare. Medicare pays for the nursing home, but they only pay for 100 days at most. A lot of people don't realize that there's this limitation on Medicare. You must be rehabilitating in the nursing home setting for Medicare to pay. So you might go into a nursing home on day 1, and on day 45, they determine that you're no longer rehabilitated. And they can stop paying from a Medicare perspective, which means then you're going to need to figure out another way to pay for the nursing home. And the last option is Medicaid. And I don't want you to confuse Medicare and Medicaid. And Medicaid is the planning that we generally do as elder law attorneys. We try to get people eligible for Medicaid because the cost of care is so high, so exorbitant, and we don't want to deplete your resources towards the cost of your care. So I wanted to do that because I wanted you to understand how we get into the Medicaid field, if you would. A lot of people hear the word Medicaid and they think that Medicaid is for, they think food stamps, they think about the impoverished, but Medicaid has really become the insurance of the middle class. And it's one of the few things that pays for nursing home and home care, quite frankly, these days. So we went through all those options, and as you could see, what really happens is none of those options are really that great. Most people don't have long-term care insurance. Medicare doesn't where they pay for more than 100 days. So you're usually down to private pay or Medicaid. And so when you hear about people selling their house or spending all their money, that's because they were faced with having to decide Medicaid versus private pay, and perhaps they were not eligible for Medicaid because they didn't do the right planning. And if they didn't do the right planning, or they fell within the parameters of the look-back periods, those are the stories where you hear people having to spend their assets, and that's what we're about to talk about today. So if we end up in a situation where we think we want to apply for Medicaid, what Medicaid does, and there's really no body called Medicaid, we just refer to like the Department of Social Services as Medicaid. But what they do is they look backwards. So if I were to apply for, let's say I went into a nursing home today and I wanted Medicaid to pay for the cost of my nursing home. And let's say I filed an application on September 1st. Medicaid is going to look backwards 5 years. That's the look back period. So for nursing home care, Medicaid is going to look back 5 years. What does that mean to look back? I mean, they don't actually have a set of binoculars and they don't come into your house and look at all your personal affairs. What they do is they say, you applicant, give me all of your financial records for the last 5 years. Everything. Even if you're married, give us your spouse's records for the last 5 years. So every bank account, every annuity, every CD, everything that you have has to be delivered to the Medicaid office. And they look backwards for that period of time, and they review it. That's what it means to look back. They review 5 years worth of records. If they find during that period of time, so now this is 2020, we'd be going back to 2015. If they find during that period of time that you moved assets out of your name, you might have given cash away to somebody, maybe you paid for a wedding, maybe you paid for college. There could be a whole host of reasons why money has left your hands during that period of time. Medicaid generally will say, you moved money out of your name, therefore you're going to be ineligible for Medicaid for a period of time. That's the penalty period. So sometimes people call the penalty period the look-back period and the look-back period the penalty period. No, they're two different things. The look-back period is a 5-year period of time for nursing home care. When they find assets, or what we say transfers, they then aggregate those transfers and they divide that number by a regional rate. Let's just say, for instance, the regional rate's $10,000 right now. It's not, but let's just say it is. And over the 5 years prior to applying for nursing home care, they found that I transferred $100,000. They're going to take the $100,000, divide it by $10,000, and what do you get? 10. That means that Medicaid will not pay for your nursing home care for 10 months. That's the penalty period. A lot of times people ask me, well, Sal, are they going to take my money? No, Medicaid's not going to take your money. Medicaid's just not going to pay for you. So then you have to go to the nursing home and you need to privately pay for that 10-month period. And that's how you lose your assets. So you've got the look-back period, and then you've got the penalty period. The penalty period is based on the amount of money that you transferred and the regional rate. And there are exceptions to the penalty period. So if Medicaid sees that I transferred $100,000 and the penalty is 10 months, well, there are a whole host of things that I can do to rebut that presumption, if you would. And that's not for today's discussion. But depending on the facts and circumstances, I might be able to rebut that presumption. And if I'm successful, they will not impose the 10-month penalty period. And there are certain things where the penalty period just doesn't apply. So, for instance, you can transfer assets between spouses. That's called spousal refusal, generally speaking. So you can take all your assets and give them to your spouse, and there's no penalty. There's no look-back period. There's no penalty. And there are other types of exempt transfers, like transfers to transfer the house to a caretaker child, transfers to disabled children or disabled individuals. So the whole series of exempt transfers that we're aware of that as elder attorneys we can work on. So for home care purposes, so that's nursing home. And you want to be mindful of the look-back period when you're doing your planning, because time moves fairly quickly when you get to certain ages. And so you want to do your planning in advance if it involves moving assets out of your name, so that way you can hopefully get past the look-back period. If you don't get past the look-back period, we have to sometimes revisit the planning that we did, another discussion for another day, and it may result in not saving all of the assets that we wanted to save. So those are all different kinds of planning techniques that we could do. For home care purposes, historically, there was never a look-back period. Now that you understand what a look-back period is versus a penalty period, understand that if I tell you that there was never a look-back period for home care, meaning that you were staying at home, there were going to be people that came into your house to take care of you, there was no look-back period. So prior to the changes in the law, we can take all of your assets, move them out of your name, and apply for home care, Medicaid home care. We would submit 3 months worth of financial records. People would call that a look-back period. It's not really a look-back period. They would ask for 3 months worth of records to see if you're financially eligible for Medicaid, because there are rules regarding eligibility as to how much money you can have in your name. For instance, you can't have more than $15,750 in your name. So they look for 3 months worth of records, but they can't impose a penalty. So if money was transferred out of your name, they can't impose any kind of penalty for home care purposes. Now the law changed. In Governor Cuomo's past budget, they are now imposing a 2.5-year look-back period for home care purposes. And the beginning date for that, well, statutorily the beginning date is October 1st, but they're going to defer the implementation of the look-back period until January. We've learned a lot since the budget came out, right? We didn't know if it was going to be retroactive or just prospective. And we've learned that it's not retroactive. So beginning October 1st, you will now be in a look-back period, right? So for instance, let's say you apply for Medicaid on January 15th, let's say, of 2021. Medicaid is going to look back 3 months. They're going to look back to October 1st to see if you transferred any assets. That look-back period is going to continue to grow by 1 month going forward until we reach the 2.5-year look-back period. So for instance, then you get into February. Now the look-back period is 4 months. In March, it's 5 months. They're going to keep looking back to October 1st. They're not going to go beyond October 1st, which is going to be important when I discuss the planning techniques that you might be able to implement. So this new 2.5-year look-back period is going to wreak havoc on people that have done no planning, that have always been operating under the theory that they're never going to go into a nursing home, they're going to stay at home, they're just going to transfer their assets at the time, and everything's going to work out. Now you need to plan not only for nursing home care, but home care as well. So again, beginning October 1st, there's a 2.5-year look-back period that will commence. We're not in a 2.5-year look-back period just yet. It's not until we get to the 2.5 years later on, but it's going to grow incrementally over the next 2.5 years. And they're not actually going to start to enforce it until January of 2020. And because we know that it's not going to be applied retroactively, we have an opportunity from now until October 1st to transfer assets. So who wants to start, which clients want to act quickly? Which clients want to be aware of what's going on? Let's say you're somebody that, let's say you have a parent and you know that the parent has been, the health has been deteriorating over time. You haven't really reached a point where, the parent needs continuous care, but you're headed down that road. And over the last several months, or even over the last year, it's gotten increasingly more difficult to manage that person's, care at home. And you just know that the clock is ticking before you're going to need to apply for some sort of care at home. You're somebody that wants to act quickly to move the assets of that person out of their name. And there's different ways to do that, and that's what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about the Medicaid trust, generally speaking. But you may want to make outright transfers. We might want to set up a Medicaid trust. We want to move the assets out of that person's name before October 1st. Because if we do that, we're not going to be subjected to the 2.5-year look-back period. So it's really important to try to take advantage of this short period of time that we have, now that we know that it's not a retroactive 2.5 years, and move assets out of people's names who might very well need care in the near future. What if your parent doesn't move the assets in the next couple of months, or it's about a month and a half, and sometime in 2021 you need to apply for care at home? Well, now the assets that remain in your parent's name have to be dealt with. And if there's a spouse, we could continue to move the assets to the spouse, right? We talked about that. But if there's no spouse, which is very common, we can no longer just transfer the assets to the kids and not have a penalty period. And we haven't even figured out the planning yet at this stage. We're still working on that, as elder law attorneys. But it's probably going to result in having to spend a good portion of that person's assets. And that person needs to continue living at home, hopefully getting the care that they need. But until we use a portion of those assets, Medicaid is not going to pay. Right? So it's extremely, extremely important. Now, life isn't perfect. You might have a loved one that doesn't, we don't really know when they're going to need care, or they're not exhibiting any signs that they might need care. Life is pretty, copacetic at this point. You still might want to consider doing planning, just like you would come into my office and do planning for nursing home care. Nobody knows when they're going to go into a nursing home. Nobody knows when they're going to get sick and need home care now. So you still want to consider doing the planning, but do you have to rush to do it by October 1st? No. If you're just looking to do your planning, we don't have to do it by October 1st. It's only for those people that might need care in the near future who want to actually transfer assets and try to beat this 2.5-year look-back period. There's a lot of people that come into my office that say, I'm never going to get past the 5-year look-back period for nursing home care. And so they would dismiss the planning, and they just wouldn't do it because they were so certain that, because of their age or because of their health, they're not going to get past the 5 years. I caution you not to take that same approach from a home care perspective. While it's uneasy that they implemented a new 2.5-year look-back period, the fact of the matter is that it's only a 2.5-year look-back period. It's not 5 years. It's not something greater than 5 years. So you don't want to take a position that you're not going to do your planning, you're not going to transfer your assets, you're not going to set up a trust because you might not make the 2.5 years. You might not make the 5 years for nursing home care, but you might get past the 2.5 years for home care. And wouldn't it be great to have Medicaid pay for home care to the extent that you needed it, after that 2.5-year period? So this is what we're working with. This is the hottest topic right now, or one of the hottest topics in the field of elder law. Another hot topic that we'll be speaking about shortly, I just don't know when, is the power of attorney legislation. We're actually waiting for Governor Cuomo to sign a new law that changes the power of attorney. And that's all I'm going to tell you about that. Until the law is actually signed, we're not going to do much about it. But when it's signed, the whole power of attorney form is going to change again, unfortunately, and we're going to have to, revisit, powers of attorney. But for today, we're trying to educate you on this look-back period and on the calculation of a penalty period, and really give you the impetus to reach out to us, just like a lot of people are doing already, if you've got somebody in your family that needs care in the short period, in the short term. Things need to be done in a relatively short period of time to try to protect and preserve as much of the assets as possible within the parameters of the Medicaid laws as we know them. And do your best to try to avoid being subjected to this new 2.5-year look-back period. It's really going to be sad for a lot of people that have not listened to these videos, that have not read our articles, that have not been educated on this look-back period, and could have done something over the next month and a half, did not, and then whether it's himself or herself or another loved one gets sick in the next 2.5 years, and you have to spend assets unnecessarily. So that's the message that we're conveying today. I don't have to stretch this any longer than it is. We're going to end a little bit early, I think. That's very uncommon of me, but the message has been conveyed. If there's any questions, feel free to call. Our phone number is 914-925-1010. You're free to email me at smd@mfd-law.com. My website is Plan Today for Tomorrow. There's a lot of useful information on my website, including a recent article that I just wrote about this. So feel free to go onto our website and read about that. And if you're not already on our newsletter, you should send us your email, because there's a lot that's going on right now. There are a lot of changes. We just sent out a newsletter last week, and we're talking about all of this. And as the changes continue to come, this is the best way to hear about it. And if you like these video chats, which I know a lot of people do, they'll be posted on my website, shortly, in a short period of time. You can always look at them over and over again. And I'd like for you to share these, our Facebook page with others, so that way we can, share the information. And so with that being said, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about the Medicaid trust, which I've talked about a million times. It's repetitive, but there's so many people that haven't heard about it, and that's actually going to be one of the techniques that we implement over the next month and a half for people that are looking to move the assets out of their names to beat this 2.5-year look-back period. I mean, it's also a very common planning technique that we implement on a regular basis, but it's going to be something that we're talking about in the face of this 2.5-year look-back period. So please join us for that in 2 weeks, Thursday in 2 weeks at 2 o'clock, and hopefully we'll give you some more great information. Take care.